So, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. My name's Jill, and my business is called The Lifestyle Leader. And I'm part of a team that I'm building to save 1 million lives a year. So, that's quite dramatic, isn't it? So, I'm here to just share with you a little bit about my story. So, like a lot of heart based business owners, and maybe you're one of those too, we very often come to this point in our lives because something has happened to us. We've been on our own journey, for example. It sounds a bit trite, doesn't it? But it certainly was the case for me. Now, if you were with me back in 2012, you'd have seen a very different Jill. I arrived in the November of that year at my doctor's surgery. I was 2.5 stone overweight. I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol. I'd suffered all sorts of infections, and I was actually diagnosed with depression. And this for me was a huge wake up call because I was then, I think, in my early 50s, and I realized that if I didn't do something about my health, that I was going to end up just like my own mother, who died of a pulmonary embolus when she was only 56. And guess what? She had high blood pressure, she had depression, she had high cholesterol, and she had all sorts of infections and depression. So, talk about a wake up call, it certainly was at that point. And I decided that I really needed to do something about it. And I went away thinking, well, what is good about my life and what's bad about my life? And over that weekend, I had to make a really important decision because it was clear that I didn't want to leave my own daughters in the same situation that I was in. Because you see, I was only 28 when I lost my mother, and I was 28 weeks pregnant with my first daughter. So she never met my 3 children. And it's been a source of massive tragedy and sadness in my life that I've had to bring up my children without a grandmother that would have been so loving and so caring and so supportive of me. So over that weekend, I made the decision that the one thing that was the most stressful for me was my job. I was working for a national governing body of sport, and I've been doing that for about 5 years. And this may sound familiar to you. I had a part-time contract, but I was working pretty much full-time. And although I was really good at what I did, and I felt that I was doing a really good job, and I'd made lots of good connections, I didn't really feel that it resonated with me and that the people that I was working with resonated with me so much. It just didn't feel quite right. But the biggest problem was the person that I was working for. If you can imagine, she was a bit like J.K. Rowling. She looked a bit like her, but she behaved like Jekyll and Hyde. So I never knew where I was. I never knew whether I was going to get happy manager or sad manager or frantic manager or depressed manager. And this became really, really stressful. So when I looked at my life, yes, there are stresses about having children. Yes, there are stresses that we all encounter in our everyday lives. But the one thing that was really tipping me over the edge was my job. And so I decided I needed to resign, which is what I did. And on the Tuesday, I went to lunch with my very good friend and my Pilates teacher, Sarah, who'd been watching my slow decline into ill health for some years and had been trying to help me. But I'd ignored her. Have you ever done that? Where you've got people saying to you, I really think that you need to do this. I really think that maybe there are some things that you need to think about. But I thought I knew best. I thought I was Superwoman. I thought that I could just carry on and that my body would continue to function in the way that it always had. But you see, I was ignoring all the warning signs, all the flashing lights that were going off in my body. The ones that were saying, actually, things aren't great in your world. You know, there's some stressful things going on that are causing you to have headaches, that are causing your blood pressure to rise, that are causing you to be ill, that are causing you to be overweight. All of those things were flashing signs. Until eventually, all the flashing signs became one big flashing sign, and I was on the verge of collapse. So it seemed to me that I needed to go back to my passion. And I decided that I was going to do something I'd always wanted to do, which was train as a Pilates teacher, which I still do now part-time. But my real passion was health. You see, I'd gained a registered nurse qualification right back in the 80s, and helping people had always been the most important thing for me. But the one thing about working within the National Health Service in the UK is that it's really about symptomatic relief. It's about treating a disease, it's about treating symptoms, prescribing medication once that's already happened. And I knew that that's not what I wanted to continue to do. I wanted to be in a situation where I was on the other NHS, the natural health solutions side, where I wanted to prevent disease. I wanted to teach people and educate them how they could avoid the pitfalls that I'd fallen into, how they could understand how their own personal flashing lights meant that there was some action that they needed to take in order to get themselves to optimum health. So over the last few years, I've helped hundreds of people. I'm very privileged to have been able to do that with all sorts of health issues, just by teaching them that instead of treating disease, we need to start building good health. And over the last few months, my attention has turned more and more to focusing on one of the biggest megatrends, the biggest killer in the whole of the world, certainly in the UK and the Western world, which is heart disease. Heart disease kills more people than diabetes, respiratory disease, cancer, and accidents all put together. But we don't really hear about it very much. More and more often we see when somebody has died all of a sudden, particularly when they're young, and there's been no warning. A heart attack has happened, and there was absolutely no symptoms that would have led that person to believe that they needed to take care of their cardiovascular system. But it's so common, tragically. And of course, the big reason for me concentrating on this is that my mother died of a blood clot too. Except this one didn't go to her heart, this one went to her lung. So you can see my motivation for why I want to be absolutely focused on preventing cardiovascular disease in women and men, and why I've turned my attention to what now is just the best news that I've had for the last month or for the last 2 years, that I can now get my hands on such an amazing natural health supplement called the Miracle Molecule that is changing people's lives on a daily basis. And my mission is to save 1 million lives a year, and I'm building a team to help me to do that. It's a global team, so whether you're in Australia or Austria or Japan or Spain, you can help me be part of this incredible revolution where we can dramatically help change people's lives. So if you want to know a bit more about me, my website is www.thelifestyleleader.co.uk. I'm absolutely delighted to be part of this group. I love working with entrepreneurs. I love working with women particularly. And I have a grand plan and nothing is going to stop me. And I hope that you feel the same way about what you do too. So I hope to talk to you soon. It's Jill signing off.